the host now. I just got that message. I'm muting myself now. Just make sure everyone mutes themselves.
Holy cow, look at all these people. That's not stressful at all. I have 4 pages of faces.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Look at you all. You're beautiful. All right. Okay. Is everybody ready? Or should we wait a second? I'm not sure what to do. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So the way this is going to work is as people come in, you need to mute yourself. We're going to have everybody muted. And then Nicole and Melanie are going to monitor the chat. If there's a follow-up question to what we're talking about, if you would type it into the chat, then they will ask it for all of us because this is a really big Zoom meeting. And if everybody starts trying to talk, it will just devolve into chaos, which it might already anyway. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But thank you for coming today to listen to what we are going to talk about. I sent the agenda out earlier. Before we get started, I did want to give a little bit of information about the email I sent yesterday about Zoom. So what we're saying is you can continue to use it right now. Am I not loud enough? Sorry, I just saw that somebody said they couldn't hear. Can you guys hear me okay? You can? Okay. All right. So, so the administrators got an email from Lexi this morning, and as of yet, they have not said you cannot use it. But what I'm understanding is that that is possibly coming, right? So the purpose of yesterday's email was mostly I wanted you to be prepared because what I don't want to have happen is have them say, like next Thursday, as of today, you can't use this anymore. And then you've got all your stuff in there and you haven't had any time to think about another option. So that's kind of the purpose of what I was trying to say. I will forward you what she sent today. There are a lot of issues with Zoom. People can hack in and get passwords. It's one of the ways hackers get passwords. And then you've heard the stories of the 2 schools in Utah where people hacked the meeting. I think Zoom would be fine if you're in a meeting like this, right, where it's just staff. But if we're doing anything that has protected information, we'd probably want to stay away from that because the other thing they can't do is protect our information. And this is mostly, obviously, the free version of Zoom. I know lots of medical offices and stuff pay quite a bit of money. People pay quite a bit of money to have like the fancy version of Zoom, which is then HIPAA compliant and all those things because you can have therapy that way and stuff like that. But that's not the version that we're using. So there is a difference. Zoom capped us at 100 people. That is rude. Okay, well, we're recording, so hopefully people can watch it later. Someone's going to have to help me figure that out because I don't know. It is recording, but I don't know how to send it. But I will figure it out. We're gonna learn. So we'll jump right into the agenda. I'm gonna see if I can be smart enough to share my screen. So we're gonna go ahead and start with, this was in the email that you got today, but I wanted to provide you with some background information just so you kind of have some context because we're living in a time that's super frustrating and it's super hard because it feels like information is always changing. And I just want you to know that I'm just as frustrated as you are. It happens to me on the daily, sometimes multiple times a day. So I'm going to have you hearken back to when we still got to see each other in person. But a week before the epic day of March, Friday the freaking 13th, when we were told we were going to be on dismissal for 2 weeks, 1 week before that, my friend that is the director in Park City texted, we have a little text group, texted us, and she's like, you guys, my superintendent just came and told me I needed to be ready to close the district and provide special ed services at a moment's notice. And I will tell you that every other district on that strand was like, what? That's crazy. Because this was when we were first getting cases here in Utah, and they were in Summit County. So the Summit County Health Department had warned all of those school districts that they were possibly going to close. And we all just kind of watched Jacqueline from afar. And I think I did walk downstairs, and I'm like, should I be worried about this? And people were like, no, I think it will be fine. You know, they've had those cases, and it wasn't like dismissed, but I think it was just so crazy people couldn't fathom that would be us. And so that was 1 week before we ended up in dismissal. And and then lo and behold, like by Wednesday, Murray District is closed. And by Thursday, we're told, you know, no groups of bigger than 100 and vulnerable populations no bigger than groups of 20. So I spent the rest of Thursday after that announcement trying to figure out how we were going to keep our medically fragile students and anybody who was immunocompromised safe, you know, in a group of less than 20, which a lot of them are included in gen ed classes. And what about the bus? And it was like, I spent all day doing that. And then 24 hours later comes the 2-week school dismissal. And at first it didn't seem like too big of a deal because we were going to have spring break. So it was only a couple of days. And so I thought, well, we can do that because they're just going to do like provide materials to keep kids going. And it didn't seem like it was going to be quite as intense as it was going to be for other districts who were still going to be in school during that time. And then, as we know, things keep changing and keep changing and keep changing. And right now we have our May 4th comeback date, but we don't know that for sure. You know, I just keep assuming. I'm in the path of assuming the worst because that keeps my brain ready, for different things. But nobody had really any warning about the closure, so none of the district departments were necessarily prepared, just like you weren't necessarily prepared. And the state board wasn't prepared. So we've received some guidance, but it amounts to about maybe 4 pages front and back about what to do. There's no manual anywhere. There's no set guidelines anywhere. Like it's frustrating, I know, because you're getting so many emails. Sometimes I've emailed you 3 times in one day, which I hate to do, but I also figure you'd rather have information than not have it. And you'd rather know when something changes sooner rather than later, because that's how I am. So I'm doing my best to make sure that happens, but I just wanted you to know that that's kind of the situation as it's been for me. And so, you know, nobody's trying to make your life more difficult than it already is. And I don't want that for us either. Sometimes there's just things that I can't control. And so anyway, I talk with other special ed directors every single day, and we talk to the state every single day, and we're trying to be somewhat consistent in what we're doing, although it comes always down to the IEP team. And so what's good for one person one family is not gonna work for another. We can't expect to do everything the same, as our demographics are really different than some of the other big districts. So there's that, but we are trying to think about the implications of different things and what all of it means. But we're all just we're like all blindfolded driving a bus together. So that's super fun, as you know. And then I do want you to know that something to keep in the back of your mind is that we are different than even the rest of the district in that the State Board of Education can meet. They met yesterday for quite a long time and talked about some different things, like they've waived us having to do ECAP at the end of this year. So we don't have to do that, no teacher evaluation. But they can't waive anything about special ed. That has to come from the feds. And so far, the feds have not waived anything. So when people ask me about, you know, do we have to hold these meetings? What about the 45-day timeline or anything like that? So far, our requirements haven't changed. Although there has been lots of federal guidance that we should prioritize student health and safety first and staff safety, and that we are going to be afforded some flexibility. In some states, they have decided that when they come out and like audit files or whatever, if something's late during the COVID dismissal period, it's not going to count against you. Utah hasn't made that decision yet, but we are talking to them about that. So just know that you read all those things about the state board and you might be anxiously hoping that you're going to read a news story that waives some requirement for special ed, and they're not going to be able to do that. They don't have that power. So far we're just kind of holding on. But most of the guidance that I've seen from like OCR and OSEP is fairly flexible, in that the big thing we need to remember is that we made a good faith effort. If we can demonstrate that we made a good faith effort, even if it's super messy, we're going to be fine. So I don't want you to worry too much about it being perfect, because what's perfect right now? Pretty much nothing, except for the amount of sweets I'm eating. But even then, that's not perfect either, because it's going to be ugly later when I have to get dressed to leave the house. So it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be bumpy and it's going to be messy, but we are just going to make a good faith effort because that's what we are required to do. So that's something I want you to think about while we're talking today. That sounds okay. If you feel like nodding at all, go ahead and do it. Thanks, Nicole, because anyway, sorry, I'm going to try to be somewhat lively, but I don't know if I can entertain you for very long. Okay, so I wrote down everybody's questions. So the first thing on our agenda today is, dang it, to talk about, I'm getting a lot of questions about what counts as services. And I want you to know that even I get stuck up all spinny in my head about some things. And so last night, knowing we were meeting today, I had a big long conversation with one of the other directors so that I could kind of get my head straight. And she talked me down on about a lot of things. So that was good, because yesterday was a stressful day and I was a little elevated, I will admit. And I also want to tell you that for me, as your director, everybody has their thing about this that kind of, I guess you could say, is a trigger of stress. So it's a variety of things. Some people are super worried about kids in really vulnerable populations where we're not sure if they are safe at home, and what should we do about that? And I worry about that too. In my role as the special ed director, the thing that gets my heart racing is what's going to happen when we go back and we have to provide all of this compensatory services. I will not lie, it wigs me right out and my blood pressure shoots through the roof when I think about it. And I'm just, right now, I'm doing the Scarlett O'Hara thing where like, I'm just not going to think about that right now because I got to focus on helping you guys getting up and running. So sometimes there's been a couple times, and I will say that my email about progress monitoring was probably one of them, where I kind of overdid it a little bit because I'm so worried about that's my thing. I just can't quite wrap my mind around how that's going to work. And so I get very stressed when it comes to talk about services and documenting. So I had a good conversation last night with an extremely reasonable person. And so I'm feeling better today. So I'm not gonna, anyway, I'll just start talking. And we've got people taking notes, and I know you can get a transcript of the thing that you recorded, so we can send that out. And I'm hoping to kind of like type it all up as general guidance that you can just have and look back at, especially for the hundreds of people who want to be here and they can't because they're not a VIP like the 100 of you. So don't tell them I said that. That was rude. So the first thing is services, what counts? And some of the questions that I've been getting are things like services, does it count if we have, let's see, what am I trying to say? Does it count if we're using a self-paced computer program? So like if kids are doing Lexia or ST Math, does that count? I've been asked about checking in versus actually providing instruction. Does that count? What about kids who are not comfortable with video conferencing? What about prepping materials? I've also had, what about the packets? What about, let's see, sorry. What about spending time modifying things in Gen Ed? All of that kind of stuff. So let me say this. We kind of need to not be so worried about the minutes, right? Trying to meet minutes. We're going to let go of that expectation because we're not going to meet the minutes. We just need to let it go because it's not going to work. I do want you to track the minutes you're trying to provide so we kind of know how big our gap is, but I don't want you to worry too much. I want you to worry about the kids. I don't want you to worry too much about whether or not what I'm about to do counts. Just write it all down and we'll figure it out later, what counts and what doesn't count. Does that make sense at all? I want it to be about taking care of them and trying to help them even just maintain a skill. We'll be lucky if a lot of our kids maintain their skills, let alone not lose ground. And so if you're interacting with a student at all, I'm happy about that, super happy about that, because we have a huge portion that are not. So I want you to focus on taking care of them, and you know what they need help with already. Even if you don't have their IEP, you know them, you know their struggles. And so let's try and provide them something to help them with those learning deficits. If it's not like super aligned because you can't remember objective number 4 on an IEP, we're letting that go, okay? You know they need to be able to read or whatever it is you're working on. We're just gonna focus on the big picture stuff, okay? There's gonna be a lot of goals you have on IEPs. I had a great question about one about an IEP that's about like starting independently. We're not gonna be able to track that unless you're having like a virtual meeting and you can see that a student is starting independently. That's great, but we're not gonna like kill ourselves trying to figure out how to track that right now or provide services for that right now. We're just gonna do the best we can. So if you can't get that kid on a virtual meeting and you have no idea if they're starting independently, you have no idea. They're starting independently and it is fine. Everything is going to be fine, okay? So we don't need to worry about that. I would say if you are prepping packets that are specific to your students, that would count. I'm going to say if you are embedding yourself in Gen Ed and you are helping create modifications for the assignments the Gen Ed teacher is getting, kind of like you would if you were in a co-teaching situation, that counts. If you are spending time helping kids completing their Gen Ed work, maybe that's what you're doing, and along the way you're talking about skills that they need, that's going to count. Somebody asked about checking in. A lot of our behavior students may have like a check-in, check-out scenario. I think that could count. I think we should be checking in with on the well-being of our kids first and foremost. That comes before you provide anything else, is just making sure they're okay. So I think you could count all of those things. I think we write everything down, whether we know if it counts or not, because it's just going to help us later. The more stuff we have about what we've done during this time, the easier it's going to be to tease out what we need to do later. Which leads us into the next agenda item, which, what was I going to say? Which now I forgot what it was. I think I know what it is. Oh, contacts versus specialized instruction, which we kind of talked about. And somebody asked, I guess they called, and it's supposed to be a session about the kid, and then the parent just needed to like have a therapy session with the special ed teacher, which is going to happen because people are stressed out and they need people to talk to. That's okay. Just let that go. That's what people need. And you called to have the session, so you can count the session. So don't worry too much about if things go sideways, because if you think about it in your classroom, things go sideways probably often. So then the things don't turn out the way you thought they would, and that's fine too. I hope that makes sense.
Kelly,
Nicole?
we
Yes.
got a question on the chat room.
Okay.
So if a teacher has held an IEP meeting and they've written new goals, should they start addressing those new goals, or can they address the old goals?
That's a really good question, and we've kind of talked about that as a group. I think right now it would be really hard to start brand new instruction on a brand new goal. I think if it's the natural next step for a student and it fits in with maybe what the gen ed teacher is having them do, okay. But I think I think you just need to do the best you can, providing them support. And if it aligns with that new goal, that's awesome. And it might not. It's highly likely that it doesn't, and that's okay too. So then you just work on what you've been working on. And
Kelly, I had unmuted myself because the question came from an essential elements teacher. So there's
okay.
no gen ed happening at all. It's
Okay.
kind of that new goal. So we had kind of talked through that and given some options, like maybe when writing an IEP, we write the new goal for the whole year, but maybe within the objectives, break them down starting from the previous goal or something like that, so that
Yeah.
they start working on those smaller objectives. Do you feel like that is an okay?
I feel like that is great. And I feel like in essential elements, it's going to be really hard to start a new goal. So I think we focus on the kids and we'll worry about that when we get back. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk for a minute about documentation versus progress monitoring, the great face-off. That's what I'm calling it, the great face-off of 2020. I think part of this is my fault because it's my anxiety around having the right documentation when we get back. That's one of my I've already told you, one of my big nervous things is that we really do need to write everything down just in case, because I just don't know what this is going to look like when we're finished. And it could get kind of, today I was thinking about, well, if gen ed doesn't make any progress, what does that mean for us, right? Are we expected to make the same? If they're supposed to keep pace with their gen ed peers and no one makes progress, then maybe things will be different. We'll have to see how that all shakes out. But I think what I need you to do more than progress monitor, so like I'm going to quit using that word if that's okay with you, because it's causing a lot of stress for you and for me, because this is not going to work the way you normally, that example of the goal of the kid getting to self-start, the teacher's probably taking data on that when they're in groups with them, and that's not going to work. And it's not going to work to use the same measure depending on what you used. And so we're just going to let that go. If we're going to talk more about just documenting everything, document your attempts to get the kids involved, the attempts to get a hold of their families, the times that you're with them and what you did, all of that. That's what I need you to focus on. I need you to focus on documentation and not so much progress monitoring, because there were lots of questions about like, well, what if the kid does great, but I don't know how much the parent is helping them, which is the case. We don't know, right? And then some kids who need a little bit of support will get none. So are we going to hold them, responsible and saying, well, you made no progress, when really they didn't even have an opportunity to show if they made progress or not? So we're not going to get too hung up on that. I think if when we're all done, you are, particularly maybe in secondary, if your kids are engaging in a Canvas class, it's a little bit easier to get some data about their level of functioning out of that type of scenario. So I mean, I think as we go, if you are getting feedback from a student and you can write down how they're doing, that's awesome. But you don't have to, I don't want you to worry about that. I would rather have you focused on just documenting the crap out of what you're doing than worrying about progress monitoring. Is everybody, give me a thumbs up if you're okay with that? Okay, good. I'm seeing that Audrey has a question.
You're seeing that.
I'm seeing that. You know what, Audrey? If we can't do a probe and we can't write new goals, then just wait. It's going to be okay. We're not going to die. No one's going to die from that. So I think we just let that go. And I think, and if well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I tried to do the agenda so I could stay focused, because you know me, that's not my strength.
Well, and I'm wondering too, Shelley, why don't I just kind of monitor the questions and you go through, maybe you're going to answer them and then we can go back and answer them after, if that's okay. People keep typing them, but just know that we'll go back if it doesn't get answered and answer them, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Let me go back to my agenda so that I don't mess up really badly. Okay, so we've talked about the great face-off of progress monitoring. So the next one was kind of about attendance in virtual groups, right? Or maybe a phone group, or I don't know. So you've set up a schedule that you're going to do a group every morning at 10. And you have a student that never comes to that group, never comes in, even though maybe, you've invited them, maybe their parents haven't, no one has responded, but you're holding the group and you've made a good faith effort to let the student know about the group. It's kind of like the same thing as when kids don't come to school when we're in session. If kids don't attend, that doesn't count against us. We are there and we are ready and willing to provide something to a student. And if they do not engage, if they self-select out, you can still count that you try to provide 20 minutes of, I don't know, a reading type of group with a student, or a calendar, or whatever it is. You've tried to provide instruction and they did not join. So it would be the same thing. Now, we're not taking attendance right now, so I do need that to be part of your documentation. So I held a group for these kids, these two came, this one didn't, or this one came, or if it's an individual session, same thing. So you were there and the person never showed up, then just write it down. I was ready and willing, you don't have to write it like that, but write down the session and that the student did not attend. That's all you have to do about that. And that goes into the next one, which is getting ghosted by parents and students, which is happening. We've had some scenarios where a parent is like, this is too much, please leave me alone. Write it down and leave them alone, okay? And then you might have parents that you're trying to call and they are not responding. So they don't answer, or we don't have a phone number that works, or we don't. So then just write down that you tried. I think this was the week for us to try multiple times, right? Because we're trying to get things up and running. I think with your students that are engaging with you, if you're a self-contained teacher, we should try on the daily to get a hold of our kids. If you are a resource teacher, the most you need to try is once a week. If we get into this about maybe not next week, but the week after, and they still haven't responded, then let's go down to once a week, that we're just going to try to engage. But I think we need to keep trying to engage unless a family has told us to leave them alone. If a family has told us to leave them alone, we should leave them alone. Just write down that they asked you not to call, or maybe they said, don't call me, we'll call you. And so then you're going to write that down. And if they never re-engage, then they never re-engage. So we just, you know, people are stressed. And so I want to honor that. So that's kind of how I want to talk about that. Somebody asked about what if I get sick, because it's not like we have a sub pool, right? I think if you're going to be gone, if you have a cold or something and you're going to be out of commission for like a few days, just kind of keep us posted on that. Like, let us know. If you're going to have something come up and you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, we need to know that so we can step in and contact families and let them know, you know, that we're there for them and different things like that. So just, you know, just keep us looped in so that we know if we need to be helping with some of those things. The same thing about, getting ghosted by parents and, Nicole?
Well, we just had a question about like, if like, does it count for YouTube videos as well? So like if you are sending out a YouTube video and you just record that you've sent that out and it's like that, it's about this many minutes of whatever it is, and whether they access it or not, you just document that.
Right. Yes, that is correct. And that would be true in Canvas or anything like that. You've sent out assignments and they don't engage with those assignments, we've still sent them out. So we've still given the opportunity.
The other question, Shelley, is daily contact outside of, like, if they're doing a group or something, like, do you want them to like, let's say that someone's doing like circle time with a group. Do you want them also, does that count as the daily contact, or should they also be individually contacting parents?
If you get a hold of them and it's because you're doing calendar and you're engaging with your student, that counts as your contact. I'm just saying for the kids, we should attempt to contact the ones that we're not being successful with. If we're self-contained, we want to keep trying every day for a while, and in resource twice a week for a while. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing about that is if you hear from a parent that they do not want to have an IEP meeting while we're in dismissal, they're not comfortable with virtual, or if you are not comfortable with virtual because there is a language barrier or an access barrier and you're not sure they're going to understand what they're involved in, then don't have it. Okay, so if a parent says, no, I don't want to have the meeting, I want to wait till we're back, then we're going to wait till they're back. If you have a parent who doesn't answer you, then that's going to work like it would when we're in school, right? So you send out the notice and nothing happens, and you send out the notice and nothing happens. You'll do your 3 attempts and then you can hold it anyway with the school team and it's done. But that is not going to apply to the parents that say, I would like to wait. So just so you know, if they ask to wait, then we're going to wait. By way of,
Shelley, to clarify that, like, in terms of the IEP, we should be attempting though, right? Like,
yes,
all of them to be in compliance. And I just, like, I want to clarify, you said if we're not comfortable doing them because of like a language barrier, but we should, even if we're not comfortable doing it virtually, we should try unless there's a mitigating circumstance, right? Like, we want to be as in compliance as we can be.
yes, and we should be trying, and all of the federal and state guidance says we should be trying, that there's the technology available, so we should be attempting to hold IEP meetings. So we're going to attempt to hold them. So there needs to be a pretty good reason not to hold it, where either the parent says no, or like I just talked with Mindy about a situation at Northwest with the language that we just are really worried about the parent really being able to engage appropriately and understand. And so we decided that we would wait, because we want people to have access to informed consent to what they're involved in. But we have a lot of parents who they've been doing this for a really long time. And so to hold a meeting would not be a big deal, but please write down why you're not holding the meeting so that we know why it didn't happen. That would be really helpful for us.
Nice. Shelly, it's Jessica. Sorry.
Hi.
I just want to clarify, because there was a previous question where the teacher said that they just weren't comfortable writing the IEP because they weren't able to get a new data probe. Are there other options that we could look at for that? Because I'm worried then that people might feel like, oh, well, if I'm not able to collect that data, then I'm not going to write the IEP. Like, how hard should we try, or what other options should we try to be sure an IEP is compliant?
I think it will come down to the data that we have, I guess. Does that make sense? Most of our students, I'm going to say this, I'm guessing that in 85% of cases, we should be able to write the IEP. Does that make sense? So this really not writing it or not holding it needs to be an exception and not the rule. So because we should, if we're progress monitoring the way we should when we're in session, we should know quite a bit about our students at this point in the year. So we should be able to know what is the natural progression of what comes next. Does that make sense? So we should be able to write most of them. There are circumstances where we wouldn't. Does that make sense? And if it's a student that, you know, like we said, if they're new to us, that could be tricky because we don't know them really at all. And if, you know, if it's a student that you didn't have a chance to take the most recent data on or something like that, I can see not writing it. But I need everyone to take that pretty seriously, right? That if you know them and you can write the IEP, you should be writing it.
Can we maybe say that if people are feeling like maybe they can't write the IEP or something comes up, that before they make that decision, they should let their consultant know or talk it through with you or Nicole, just so that people are having help with making that decision? Is that?
Yeah. So if you have a question, that's good, Jessica. So if you have a question about what you should do in a certain case, talk to your consultant and they'll help you figure that out. I'm just seeing Emily's message, so I'm going to share it because we're talking about IEPs. So we're having a glitch with Power School special programs right now because we're special, and because it's April Fool's for like all of 2020. So we're having a glitch with Power School, and they're having trouble right now. They're trying to fix it, but right now, if you need to finalize a document, you need to send the student name and student number to Emily, and she will do it for you, which is her favorite thing that's ever happened. I'll say that. It's not. But anyway, that's poor Emily.
We also got some information from Sarah that the multicolor, like the translating is not working with multicolor meetings. So we'll have to look into that too, I guess.
We will. Okay. Let's see, what was I going to say? I'm seeing this question about the Canvas course, and if they don't accept the invitation, it's kind of the same thing. You've put it out there, you've tried, and they haven't accepted it. So don't freak out about that. Let's see. Let me look at my agenda again. My husband is rudely making really yummy smelling French toast right now, and I am not stuck. I love talking to all of you, but I'm like, why is he making it now? Why couldn't they make it after? Whatever. Rude. The rude things that happen when you're at home. Hours of operation. So I had a teacher let me know that they have a family that's asking them to do the services at 6 p.m. at night. No. We need to be flexible with families because this is complicated. I can tell you right now, I have no idea if my children are finishing their work or not. Jordan School District, there's the truth, because I'm doing this all day, and so they tell me they are, and I see them on laptops. So I'm hopeful that something is getting completed, but I am not 100% sure. But so it's really tricky, as many of you know personally right now, to try to juggle all of those things. But there, even though we're doing this type of thing and we're doing all these electronic things, we do still get to have boundaries, and you still get to have time with your family. And so you do not need to acquiesce to that request. I would say if we could be really flexible until through like maybe 4:30 or so, because it's going to be hard for our students that need parent support to do things, to get that help. But we're going to try, but at the same time, we got to be able to, I mean, we're school people, so it needs to happen within a reasonable amount of the school day. Does that make sense? Is that fair? I think I'm interestingly thinking that we don't have enough. We're probably going to have more IEP questions, and that's okay. So maybe in just a minute, we'll open that up if there's something I haven't talked about. Okay. So we talked about hours of operation. Someone asked about suggestions for collaborating with general ed, and we have some teachers that are doing some pretty amazing things, and so we should try to get some stuff together about that. I know we talked about it in secondary resource, and I was part of an IEP team earlier this week, where the hard part is I don't know anything about these platforms either. So I have never used Canvas. I'm a student currently, and we use Blackboard instead of Canvas. So I don't know anything about that platform exactly. But I do know that you can be a member of those classes, and you can see what the gen ed teacher is asking kids to do, and then you can modify those assignments. You can even post an assignment for just one student. So if you have a student in a biology class, you can look at what the gen ed teacher is doing and then post for that one student an accommodated version of that assignment. And I would say it's really overwhelming right now for parents. I know we're getting emails from 18 different teachers right now at my house every day. So it's super overwhelming. So the more we can use our time to help the kids access that, the better off our kids are going to be, and the less frustrated parents are going to be. So those of you that are resource teachers or people that have been co-teaching, keep doing that. Find out what's going on in gen ed and what can you do to support that for kids and for families as much as possible, because it's just a lot. It's just a lot for our families, and so we want to keep doing that if we can. Some of the other stuff that's on here, and then we have about 15 minutes left, so we'll do a few questions and then we'll end. I got a lot of questions. I got some questions about what's going to happen with ESY. What is makeup going to look like, or what's compensatory going to look like? And the answer is a big fat I don't know to all of those things. And I've been so focused on trying to figure out how we're going to do this in the first place that I'm sticking my head in the sand about the compensatory services. I'll just be 100% honest. So I don't know. And some of the other directors that I'm talking to have started with some ideas about like basic decision tree. We did get some questions from one of the federal entities from OSEP, like these are the questions you're going to ask about what compensatory might look like for a certain student, but I don't know what that's going to look like yet. I know it will look different for different groups. So just, I'm going to assume, you know, and compensatory services is not minute for minute, so I don't want you to panic. It's not like we're gonna have to make up every minute that we didn't provide during this time. It's a little bit about that, but it's also about progress and what the kids, where they are at now compared to where they were when we dismissed, and what do we need to do to close that gap. So it does not mean they're going to get every, you know, if they're a self-contained student with 1650 minutes, they're not going to get all of those 1650 minutes. And so don't worry about that. So we'll keep working on it. We will, I think maybe in 2 weeks we have another one of these, and hopefully I could share some more about those types of topics. We're not going to know about ESY until we know when we're actually going to be back. There's just no way around that, because we can't set anything up I'm hesitant to go too far into ESY if we're not gonna have access to buildings or something crazy like that. So I think maybe when we get closer to the end of this dismissal, like if we get to May 4th and we actually get to be back in school, then if we're getting close to May 4th and it's looking like we're gonna actually go back, then we can start thinking about those things. But I haven't been able to wrap my mind around that yet, just telling the truth on that.
So we got another question about ESY, about like if they're holding an IEP, should they check to be determined later? I don't check what you would be at, what is appropriate. Like if you know they need ESY, check that.
Yeah.
Don't wait, because we will figure that out when we,
right.
We'll figure out how to.
If you already have your regression and recruitment data and you already know the student's going to need it, boy, howdy, are they going to need it now? Like they're going to need it now more than they've ever needed it, right? Because if they needed it after the winter break or something like that, then they're going to need it more than ever. So don't wait on that if you have the data and you know that they need it.
And I would caution against anybody at this time marking no on any IEPs that you're doing no, not eligible, because I don't think that we have the data right now to prove that anybody's not eligible, and that maybe when we get back it's going to be. So I would say at this time pretty much always mark determined later or
yes. Yeah, that's probably wise. And we will probably end up offering more ESY this year than we've ever offered before. I do want you to remember that ESY and compensatory services are not the same thing. ESY is something the kids would have required anyway. So I'm going to be really clear about that with families, you know, that this program is ESY, and then if they need comp ed, it will be on top of that. Does that make sense at all? Because we would have owed them that anyway.
I want to remind everyone too, ESY can look a variety of different ways. So it doesn't just have to be that in-school ESY too. If we're looking at that, we can still be looking at continued support with packets or check-ins or whatever it is. So, you know, we can all deal with that later. Sorry, Shelley.
Oh, you're fine. One of the things that did come up in the questions, and I see it in the chat, is LRE. Right now, we're not going to hold LRE meetings. Because here's what I think. If you don't have the data yet to support LRE, now is not the time to be taking data. And so we wouldn't be able to do that anyway. If you already had all of the data ready and we had your packet, I think what we will do is we're going to hold off, and then depending on what May 4th brings, besides Star Wars Day, we will consider having placement meetings for next year if the data happened before the dismissal happened. But if we're coming back from this super group chaotic traumatic event and we're back for 3 weeks, we're not going to place kids based on that. I think that would be not okay. So anyway, there's that. Sammy asked a really good question. We have lots of paras that want to do lots of things. So if you need to deliver packets and none of your paras are comfortable, I have a whole list of people that are. And we are happy to help you with that. They are more than happy to help you with that. So you just need to let your consultant know. I can't have everybody email me or my head will explode, number one. And number two, I will lose it. I will lose something because I get lots of emails a day anyway. And now it's just special how many I'm getting, which I'm happy to answer. And I'm trying to answer as quick as I can, but I just worry that it'll get bumped down in the list and I will miss it. So the consultants can help coordinate getting materials to kids if you need them to. And then,
so one more question about LRE is if the packet was already submitted and the meeting was scheduled and we didn't hold it, I mean, we'll just pick up where we left off. It kind of, again, we just have to kind of play it by ear in terms of what we're doing, but you know, we would still, you would have the data already collected and know under better circumstances what this child is capable of. So we will pick that up where we left off if you had already submitted a packet.
yes. So yeah, okay. And then here's a doozy. Another PowerSchool problem that we're having is they did a release and it messed up, and I don't know all the reasons why, so don't ask me the detailed reasons why, but it messed with our eligibilities. And so we're supposed to be getting a standalone evaluation summary form that will be out next week. So don't just wait until that comes out before you do any new ones, okay? Or you'll be sad. So that's what we need to do. I think our old ones are okay, Kalinda, but I will check. Okay, and then let's see. Oh, Lindsay, that's a really good question. So I've gotten this a couple of times about expectations for services for behavior support kids. And this is what I would like to do. I'm going to send out an email to all of the behavior support people and the behavior specialists, and we'll get a little meeting going of our own with some ideas of what to do for behavior. But this is what I know in our little Ascend day treatment program, some of the stuff we're trying to do involve things like picking, it's all about supporting the child's behavior at home. So it might involve working with our parents a little bit and talking to them about how things are going at home. And we talked about picking one target behavior at home for the parent to praise. And then providing little behavior boxes with like a tracking sheet and some reinforcers that we know the kids like, and asking parents to look for a behavior and praise a positive behavior. We're obviously not going to be able to, you know, train them on this giant behavior plan. So the idea is to make their life at home as positive as we can possibly make it. We're having a lot of problems generally. This doesn't apply to everyone. Hi, Poppy. Look at cute Poppy and Jessica's swear. We're having a lot of problems, I know, at CBTU. We're just not getting engagement at all. So they've put together things and they can't get people to engage with them. And that's probably going to be somewhat likely with that population, but we're just going to make that good faith effort to make it in. And this is a group of kids that I feel really like if we can just check on them as much as we can, I think we should. And then what was I going to say? So we'll get that little group going, and you guys can meet and we can brainstorm. I know that the behavior specialists are working on a lot of things. I did want to put out there, I didn't get to talk to her about this, so Sarah Daniels, if you're on this, I'm giving you an assignment. Sarah Daniels is our behavior specialist for Essential Elements, and we thought, I was talking, some of our parents are having a really hard time at home with their students, and so I think what we'd like to do is Sarah's gonna, through you, I don't want Sarah to call parents on top of everyone else, but what would be great would be if we establish some times when Sarah's available for parents to call and consult with her and get ideas about how they can do things at home. And then she can set up check-ins with those parents from there. So Essential Elements people, that's something I'll work with Sarah on, and then we'll get a little schedule for her and you can send it to your families. So if they feel like they need help, we can get them help. But I think we could kind of almost do the same. Behavior support teachers, you could also be that person for your family. So that might be an idea, that you're going to set up consult time for parents to call if they're really struggling with something. And another question that I got is if we're really concerned about the wellness of a child, so if we know that they're going to a home where there may be neglect or abuse, we can call and ask the police department to do a wellness visit to the home. That's pretty much our only option right now. So I would, please don't send them to like 25 homes, but if you have someone that you're really, really worried about, and we have a couple that I already really worried about, then that is an acceptable, totally good thing to do, to have them check. So I'm seeing some questions about eligibility.
One of the things is that what do parents know at this point about when, if they've signed a consent and yet eligibility hasn't been done, or it's in the process or something?
Right. So here's the deal with eligibility. Because we have some kids where some of the testing is done, but not all the testing is done. So I haven't had a chance to yet, but the Sykes and I are going to meet. They don't know that either, so surprise, Sykes. We're going to meet and talk about when would we have enough information to move ahead with an eligibility, even if we didn't quite do everything, and when would we not. We're not going to do virtual testing. We can't do classroom observations, and OCR has just flat out said, if you can't do the in-person stuff, then don't do it. A lot of there's no way to control the testing environment in a virtual environment, and we have parents that will help their students either do worse or better on the test, depending on the parent. And so we can't guarantee that it would be the right environment, so then the results are not helpful. And then we also want to be careful. I want to be careful with taking into account just the general level of anxiety in the world right now, and how that might influence a student's performance on something. Trauma is a rule out, right, for special ed, so we just need to be cautious about that. So I've already have it written and it's been translated. And I have this beautiful list being made by our TCMs and our TCCs of every student who has an eligibility in process, or has a, what's the word for it? Or has a signed consent, but we didn't start. And we're going to be sending home written prior notice to those families that we're not going to do it until we're back in session. And there's plenty of federal guidance to support us in doing that. So don't worry, that's my little fight to fight for you. You can go ahead and tell, if a parent is asking, you can go ahead and say, we can't do the testing right now, so we're going to have to wait, and you're going to get an official letter from the Salt Lake District letting you know. So if they ask you that, if they get really angry or whatever, let me know and we'll reach out to those people. But we're going to be sending those home. We're just going to take the list, and I'm going to look at what's due this week that we can't finish, and I'm going to send all of those people a letter. And then the next week, I'm going to send all of those people a letter, and we're just going to kind of do it week by week based on when they're due. And then we'll prioritize the oldest ones first when we get back. So that's how that's gonna work. Doesn't that sound like fun? It does. Kalinda, yes, you could do that even if DCFS is already involved. And in that particular case, I probably would. I know about that one. Let's see. So we've talked about
To let everyone know, Claire, thank you, Claire. She had a resource for home-based behavioral and sensory support materials, so we can look into that too if you have parents that you think would access that, or if you want to explore that a little bit.
I just copied the link so we can send it out.
Perfect.
Does that seem okay? I'm just gonna
Shelley, super quickly before we hop off,
yeah.
Can you clarify students who are participating in a lot of inclusion opportunities, what our responsibility is to them, and what our inclusion specialists can and should be helping people with at this time?
That's a good question. So we have some parents, especially in EE, who have a high expectation of inclusion for their kids. And I also haven't had this conversation with Liz or Martha yet. So Liz and Martha, you're getting an assignment. So if the kids are spending time in their inclusion classes, they should probably be included in the group meetings, right? So if a teacher's doing something like this, our kids should be invited to those things. We can have our kids participate at different levels. So one of the things that Martha and Liz can help us with is looking at what the general education teacher is doing and finding ways for our kids to access that. And some kids are doing more academics than others. So if they really just go and participate in the group, then they can get invited to a meeting like this and we'll go from there. But if they can do some of the work, then some of our families want to see that they're still involved in that. So for elementary EE people, that's what we're going to have Martha and Liz work on. I know right now that it's a bigger deal at Highland Park than anywhere else at the moment. So Martha, focus your efforts on that. I don't even know if Martha is on this call, but we will, what was I gonna say? So that is kind of where that should be. Does that make sense, Jessica? Okay. Do we have any other questions before we finish?
Shelley, it's Melanie.
Hi, Mel.
Just to clarify, so those people that have eligibility meetings either scheduled for today or possibly Monday already, should they hold off until we can get that update or go with what we have?
It depends on if it's done. If it's typed in already, I think you're okay, but I don't know. Emily, are you there? Can you answer this question? Maybe not.
Yes, I can.
Okay, go.
It depends if they used and created the old eligibility or the new eligibility. So if they want to send me the student name and number, I can look at it.
Okay. So if you have it scheduled and you're not sure, ask Emily. Okay. And the new eligibility just came out earlier this week. Is that right, Emily?
It came out on Monday.
Yeah. So if you wrote the whole thing the old way and it's finalized, then you would be fine, right? Yes. Okay. So it kind of depends on when it was written. That makes sense? So if you're not sure, this is just a good rule in life. If you're not sure, ask Emily and she has the answer. Okay. Anybody else? You guys are very well behaved, I have to say.
Kelly, this is Mindy. Sorry, just while taking notes, jumping back up to the question about services. You mentioned talking about Lexia and ST Math.
Oh, and then I didn't talk about it, did I?
But then you didn't cover it. So just wanting to make sure, I'm sure that's a question a lot of people have.
sorry, this is why other people are watching what I do. I think the answer is, I guess, the answer is yes, it can count. I think it depends on why we have the student on it, right? So I think it can, especially where Lexia has like, it can let you know when a kid needs a lesson, and you can kind of make sure that that's all happening. So if it's something that supports something that they're working on, then 100%. And that's also an easier way sometimes to engage families. So if that's what we can get them to engage in, then we'll count it, write it all down, and we'll figure it out. Okay, it's 10:35, so we're gonna go ahead and end, but I wanted to, so I'm gonna share my screen one more time, and you're just gonna be okay with it. So you guys know that I have a girl crush, and her name is Brene Brown. And so I've done all the appropriate stocking, and now we have the same haircut, and we have similar glasses. So that's what I'm working on in life. So she has started doing, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. She does a podcast, and it just started, I think it's called Unlocking Us. Is that correct? Did I get it right? Anyway, so her very first one came out right after like the whole dismissal and all of that started happening, and it's really, really good. But she talks about something called an FFT, which the family-friendly version is that it is a fabulous first time, but her F stands for something else that I'm sure your imagination can run with for the effing first time. And she talks about how hard those are. And I wanted to, and that it's okay to, that it's very stressful and all those kinds of things. And so that you, it's normal to be having all of these crazy feelings, because what we're doing is super hard, and it's like this giant cluster of an FFT as a whole. So because in all of this, I know you have a lot of questions, and my favorite thing about all of the questions that you have is it just speaks to the amazing professionals that you are, and how much you care about your students, and how much you care about doing things well. And this is a hard situation that we're all in, because most of us pride ourselves on being good at our jobs, and it's kind of hard right now to be really good at your job, because holy crap, everything has changed so much, and it's changing all the time. So I just want to share with you something that she says in her blog post about the FFTs, and I would encourage you to go find the podcast and listen to it. It's very, very good. So she talks about how effing first times, it's hard to be new at things, from small things to global pandemics, when we have no relative experience or expertise. The vulnerability, uncertainty, and fear of these firsts can be overwhelming. Yet showing up and pushing ourselves past the awkward learner stage is how we get braver. And then she talks specifically in her blog post about teachers and trying to do this online learning environment. So there's a section for teachers, and then there's a section where she talks to parents about why this is so hard. And so the bad news is, and it's so accurate, it's unbelievable. She says it will be a total FFT for you, your team, your school, and your district. The wheels will fall off. It will not go as planned. And for those of you asking students to get dressed and sit in front of a computer for 8 to 10 hours as if they're in class, I hate to tell you that is never going to happen. Neurologically, it's screen time. Have you ever been in the same room with someone who has played Minecraft for 4, 5, or 6 hours? Non-human, which is true. And I hadn't really made that connection about it. Really is just screen time. So there's only so much we can do. And I've even noticed that with myself, since now this is now the only way for me to do my job. The days where I don't walk away at various times of day, by the evening, and yesterday was a perfect example of me losing my mind because I had been locked into it too much for too long. But the good news is this: if you're someone, and this describes you guys, so that's why I like it so much. If you're someone who is driven to show up for your students and connect if you're willing to be a learner, if you're willing to stay curious, if you're willing to change course 478 times in one semester or 1 week, you will totally crush it. So I just want to reiterate and end by saying that you guys are totally going to crush it because you're passionate about your kids, and that just take care of them and write it down and we'll be fine. I'm not worried about, I'm more worried about the kids we can't engage than the kids that we're talking to, which I think is your worry as well. But we're going to make our good faith effort, and we are going to do the best that we can with what we have, and it's going to be messy. And what works one day isn't going to work the next, and we are just going to let that go and do the best we can. And somebody said something to me in a meeting I was in, or I saw it somewhere, I can't even remember anymore, about that we just kind of have to approach everybody with grace. And that's how I'm hoping to be, and I'm hoping that we can all be that way for each other, because we're really, this is all we have is each other right now to try and figure this out. There isn't anybody coming to tell us how to do it right. And so it's our chance to band together for our kids in Salt Lake District and make sure that they're okay first and foremost, and keep them connected. I'm getting a lot of feedback that kids really like to see their teacher. So if there is a way for you to engage with them in a platform like this, even if it's just a check-in, their countenances change when they get to see their teacher. Because for a lot of our kids, we are their source of stable, and we are their touchstone in their lives. And so some of them are in pretty chaotic places right now. And we're not able to provide that place of safety. So if they can see you, that makes a huge difference. So if that's possible, then let's do that. But I want you to know that we can do this FFT, and we're going to screw up maybe even more than 478 times, but that's not the point. The point is that we just keep trying and we just do our best. So we'll schedule another one for in a couple of weeks. And it was lovely for me to see you all. I don't like isolation very much. This extrovert is not handling it well. So I miss seeing you, and I miss being in buildings. The energy of the school is one of my favorite things. So anyway, just know that I think about you every day, and I worry every day about what's being asked of you. And so keep sending me questions, keep sending your consultants questions, and we will do our very best. Essential Elements teachers, the iPads and the cases are here, and we are going to deliver on Monday. So you can do a little cheer about that. And that's all I have. And now I want to hug all of you, and I can't. It's stupid. But anyway, let me know if you need anything, okay? And we'll get through it together. So there you go. Have a great day. Walk around the block. Is it sunny outside? I hope so. I'm tired of the snow. Anyway, mwah. We'll see you guys later.